Is there safety and trust in this relationship? Most of the time when they're in counseling, the answer to that is no, I don't trust that they have my best interest in mind.
Unless you choose to love, your marriage will fall flat. Welcome to the Grace Marriage Podcast. I'm Brad Rhodes.
And I'm Marilyn Rhodes. We're here to help you build a marriage that's stronger, more connected, and full of grace.
I'm Rick Dayton, joining Brad and Marilyn as we bring you weekly conversations designed to inspire and equip you to live intentionally in your marriage.
We'll share practical tips, powerful stories, and strategies to help you and your spouse grow closer and thrive together.
So whether you're just starting out or have been married for years, there's always room to grow. Let's do this together. This is the Grace Marriage Podcast.
Welcome to the Grace Marriage Podcast, and we have somebody that I think a whole lot of here today. Somebody that is a great counselor, great therapist, loves people, cares about people, gives wise counsel, and cares about them in the process. So we'll let Lauren Early welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Looked like my compliment was bringing a little emotion.
It was. I might have gotten a little teary-eyed, but I stopped myself.
That's how I feel. We've referred a lot of people to Lauren. So
We have, and we need more Christian counselors out there.
Yeah.
We're so thankful to the Lord that we've got her as a resource in our town that we can.
Well, tell us about your credentials and what you do.
Sure. So I'm a licensed clinical counselor, but I primarily focus on marriage and family. So I've been doing that for about 11 years. I've married 16 years. We have 3 kids. I'm in a private practice, and I also get to do some pastoral counseling at my church, working on marriage and family.
Well, that is great. Well, so what percentage of your practice is marriage problems?
About 60% are couples, but I would say that there's probably a lot of individuals that are coming to counseling just talking about their marriage with maybe an unwilling spouse who won't join them in counseling.
And I would guess that everybody that has emotional issues that's struggling, it could have some impact on the marriage, I would guess.
Absolutely. It's pretty significant, and even whenever I've counseled adolescents, we're also talking about marriage, and so it really infects the whole family system.
Yeah, we've often say that the health of marriage is atmospheric to everything.
Yeah.
So you're right, adolescence, youth, everything. Well, what is some of the most common things you see, when people come into your office? What are the most common problems and issues that people end up in crisis?
Yeah, in crisis, unfortunately, when we're talking about crisis situations, there's infidelity. So people are already in a place of horrible pain and hurt and disconnection, and they find themselves sitting in my office just wondering, where do we go wrong? And then I have people who haven't gotten to that extreme yet, but they are just struggling. They always say communication. I don't know if you guys hear that all the time. We just are struggling to communicate. But I think that often it's a lot more than just communication. That's just a surface issue.
Yeah, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks, what Scripture says. And if hearts aren't right and the words aren't right, boom, the communication isn't right.
It's not going to be right.
Yeah, so couples that hearts are not right toward one another, good luck communicating well with one another.
Yeah. I continually, when I'm working with couples, I always bring it back to, is there safety and trust in this relationship? Is there more safety and trust in your partner than not? And a lot of times the answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I find myself working. Is like, how do we reinforce and establish safety and trust? So then we can get towards vulnerability. Then we can get towards that emotional intimacy and physical intimacy that you're longing for. But safety and trust have to exist first, or we're not going to get there.
And we had a point, and I'll let Marilyn speak to it, that she wouldn't have felt very safe. Like she said, I would rather not disagree with you than disagree with you, because it's so unpleasant talking to you when I do disagree with you. Mm-hmm. Was that ever the case, Marilyn?
Yeah. That was our start. So, and I'm really sensitive, so I didn't feel safe, and so it just shut me down. And I'm an introvert, so I process internally, and then he's an extrovert and an attorney. So it just really it just set us up for real unhealthy. But the root of it was I didn't feel safe to disagree.
Yeah. And then the trust part, right? Like couples will say, well, I trust that they're not going to leave me, or I trust that they're not fooling around. I'm like, oh, okay, great. But do you trust that they have your best interest in mind and that they're capable of enforcing that best interest? And then I'm like, okay, so then we also have trust issues, because most of the time when they're in counseling, the answer to that is no, I don't trust that they have my best interest in mind.
So you have a spouse who's got strong opinions and kind of shares them a little strong, and the other person doesn't feel it's safe. So, and I know the scripture, fool loves to hear his own opinions, a wise man seeks understanding. How do you help somebody that has a strong personality that comes out kind of hot get to a point where their spouse feels safer with them?
Yeah. So there's that question of like, how's that working for you? Like obviously there's a goal when someone's coming in hot like that. They're hoping to get a point across. They're hoping to be heard. They're hoping to affect change. But even that, then I'm like, well, how is the skill that you're using? How's that working at getting you where you want to go? And it's not, the answer is it's not. It's impossible to get you where you want to go. And so then it's like, okay, well, how do we reinforce? Similarly, are you talking about yourself when you ask that question?
A little
Brad?
bit. Used to almost perpetually, now more occasionally.
You're a lot. Yeah.
Am I better?
We both have grown. We both had a lot of growing to do.
Have I gotten better, baby?
Yes, you have. I've gotten a little less sensitive.
Yeah. I think similarly, like that would be our story too. Like I'm a feeler. I'm a therapist. I talk about feelings all day long. My husband is an entrepreneur and business owner. He was military, so that took some learning. And I spent a lot of time the first few years of our marriage just crying. And then him being annoyed, like, why are you crying about this? Like not understanding. And it just took us desiring, again, like if we look at that, like we desire to be close to one another. We desire to be connected. So when we say something's not working, humbling ourselves and saying, okay, I've got to re-strategize.
Right.
I need a new strategy on how to get to where I'm wanting to go, because what I'm doing is not working.
Right.
Yeah, I've told people that's like, Brad, if I don't tell them consistently, they won't change. I said, well, how's that working? And don't tell me about the change that's affected over the last 4 or 5 years. I said, I'm not saying my strategy's right. If you don't do it, it'll work just like yours, but give it a shot, so how, like practically speaking, somebody that their natural default, like mine, can be to argue, to, speak in a tone that's not as helpful, even though you don't really realize it. Like Marilyn's like, I didn't raise my voice. Well, she felt that I did. So how do you help tone people back, tone them down and make them safer?
Yeah. I think one, like when people say that, like I didn't raise my voice or I didn't have a tone. It's like, okay, maybe you didn't. Let's just say you didn't. But if your partner perceives it as that, then we're still not getting anywhere. So, I often use this analogy of like, imagine that we all come into our marriage with our own full luggage set of baggage, right? So yours being maybe a sharper tongue, yours being like really highly sensitive. And so we all have our baggage, and we can have a million reasons why we're carrying the baggage that we have. But when we get married, the expectation is going to have to be that from time to time, I am carrying my spouse's baggage, and I'm carrying the weight of that. And I have to adapt my behaviors and my capacity in order to help them, And so maybe you didn't have a tone, but if your wife perceives it as a tone, let's just try and say, okay, well, because even if you have to reframe in your mind, well, because my wife is sensitive, put it on her for a second. Because she's sensitive, I have to shift my behaviors if I want to be close to her. Great. Then that's effective. It's not the blaming, it's the awareness of what baggage they're coming in with.
Yes.
And then adapting what you're doing as a result. Like if I'm walking down the airport and I've got my baggage, and then Aaron needs me to carry something because he's fiddling in his pocket for his wallet, well, then I've got to maneuver my baggage a little bit differently for a minute to carry what he needs me to carry. And so in that instance, it's you changing your tone. It's like, okay, because she's sensitive in my marriage, because she's sensitive, I have to change and adapt a little bit.
That's a good word picture. And we do. I want to help him carry his load.
Yeah.
I mean, deep down, I think couples can get lost and forget that we're on the same team. And when you look at it like that's the way I can help him, by recognizing that I'm sensitive and he's a little witty and not as sensitive. And so we've got to.
Yeah.
You think of 1 Peter 3, live with your wife in an understanding way. That's exactly what that is. It's like understand her and love her as she is. But oftentimes you find that they're more like complaining who she is or complaining who he is and just trying to call them to be something different. And that doesn't seem to be as effective.
No. And, I think that is because, if we don't go into marriage thinking we want to change our spouse necessarily. at least not consciously. But we certainly have expectations of what we think they're going to be for us.
Absolutely.
And when they're not that, we can come up with lots of reasons why they're wrong. And the reframe for us as believers is, wait a minute. Before this person was called to be my spouse, they are a child of God and they have a purpose and a calling on that. So how can I assist in that and not just look at them as only this person who's supposed to meet all of my needs as my spouse?
Exactly right. Because they're not going to ever.
Never.
We often say, the reason so many marriages struggle is because people ask from it something it cannot bring.
Yeah.
I mean, our beauty, our security, our respect, it doesn't come from our spouse. It comes from God. And I've told the guys, I said, she makes me feel disrespected. I said, I want you to feel like a man of respect because you're a child of God, not because she's acting like you. I don't want you to be needy and parasitic. I want you to be confident in victory as a child of God.
That's so good.
I mean, do you agree? It's like the big importance is growing in your identity and confidence in Jesus.
Yes, absolutely. Because it changes everything, So I know that for a long time we talk about, God first in your marriage, and that's true. But it's more about him at the center and him at the center changing of my heart, not just my marriage, and of my husband's heart, not just, we have our quiet time together or our devotional together. Because I think people think that like, oh, we're having our devotional. Like, well, wait a minute. What about you and Jesus? How is he changing you? How are you affected by knowing that you belong to him? And watch what that does in your marriage, because the expectations of your spouse will change when your identity is secure in him.
Yeah, that's so good. That's Marilyn. I mean, I think it's your testimony.
Purpose changes in that too.
Yeah.
Because my purpose when we were first married was to get from him what I wanted.
For sure.
And then when the Lord brought my heart to that, he's like, I'm your hope, and you just need to love him the way I'm calling you to love him. And it shifted everything, because our marriages are bigger than us. They're so much bigger than us, but we can get short-sighted and
you're ready for
you're
it.
helping sanctify me.
I was such a bad hope. I got to find my hope somewhere else, because they seem pretty hopeless right now.
Has. You've done it, Brad.
Yeah.
You did it.
Yeah.
But Tim Keller in The Meaning of Marriage, he was like, where now people are getting married for themselves. This is an institution that God created for his glory. The purpose of marriage isn't for you to feel satisfied and complete in what they do or don't do for you.
It will fail.
It will fail.
And in my experience, is life knocks everybody off their horse sometimes, and they just don't do well. They get down, they get depressed, they get paralyzed, they have trouble doing things. And if you have a codependent marriage, all of a sudden the marriage blows up because one doesn't have anything to give. So it's like, if you're too dependent on marriage, it's just a matter of time before it breaks down, because it's a matter of time before your wife or husband has a bad month or bad year. Have you seen that?
Yes. And I think that there is this false hope that we do put in our spouse from time to time of, they're amazing. I just am thinking about when I first got married, and I longed for security, and Aaron felt like the most secure human I could have picked, and then when he struggled, whenever his security was shaken, that became really difficult for me. And realizing, okay, but so now what do we do? Now what do we do? Because my hope is no longer I thought you alone were going to carry this for us, and you are imperfect. So that's not going to be possible. And our world could have imploded. It could have.
And I loved how much Marilyn liked me in dating. It just made me feel special. She'd leave notes on my window, leave golf balls and stuff. And it was just so, I got so, and then we got married, and, I played a big role of it, but within 6 months, she couldn't stand the sight of me.
Well, we both quit the pursuit.
Yeah.
Why is it you think, like in dating, people talk on the phone for hours, they text like crazy, they'll drop anything for each other. Then they get married, and instantly, like when we were dating, Marilyn calls, I drop anything, talk to her as long as she want to talk. We get married. If I answer the phone, I say, what do you want? Yeah. And what happens there? I mean, what happens that just all of a sudden there's such a shift from, man, I'm here for you, I'll do anything for you, to you make the covenant that you'll do anything for you, but then you won't.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of pieces to that, and I think that the role of man and woman they differ in this. But the way that I explain it to couples is there's this actual chemical reaction that our body has and our brain has whenever we are first connecting with another human. And so if we liken it to like, okay, like at first, like there's all these endorphins going, you know, and there's this excitement and you want the endorphins. So you want to be close to them or you want to, you know, do some sort of pursuit or gesture to show love and affection. And it's like the endorphins are running, you're getting dopamine hits, right? Well, the longer that we do that, the harder that is to get to that reaction, that chemical reaction in our brain. So I think that actually there's a little bit of science behind it. You know, that actually the chemical reaction doesn't come as easily any longer, you know, and I actually have to put a little bit more work into it. And so we can get disillusioned because we're so used to that chemical reaction, how fun it feels. And I've seen a lot of couples say, well, it doesn't feel that way anymore, so I'm done. I'm like, wait a minute. That's just a biological response, you know? That's just a biological response. And you actually have the ability to reestablish that in a different way now. You're just going to have to invest in it a little bit more. And I also think, you know, like stressors of life. When we are dating, we don't have to argue about the finances. When we are dating, we're probably not making a lot of decisions together about children and all of these things. But whenever we introduce those stressors,
That's so good.
and we're having to communicate and be on the some sort of same page, you know, that becomes a little bit more complicated. And sometimes people just get disillusioned and frustrated with it, that it's complicated and think that that's a sign that this isn't working.
Wrong.
So yeah.
And you hear the cliche, love's a choice. Well, it just is. And, you know, that chemical response, I mean, the dating part, often your brain's got a pleasure buzz going on.
Yeah, for sure.
And that pleasure buzz always wears off. And if you don't understand what love is, being a choice, and if you don't believe it's a choice, Scripture says love your enemies.
Yeah.
When is your emotion going to drive loving an enemy?
Yeah.
You know, love is an absolute choice. And it's not, I mean, just if you back away from it, you think about it, I'm loving her so I can receive this pleasurable emotional response in my brain. That's like trying to take a hit off something.
Yeah. It is not love, and, you know, and I know that we say it's cliche, that love is a choice, but it's not cliche. It's truth. You know, it's just truth. And so I think that expectation of like, wait a minute, no, I can't make this conditional based on my physiological response. It has to be bigger than that.
Love is doing things you don't want to do. I mean, I'm not clean. I made the bed and organized 9 pillows. Yeah. It's crazy. Do it every morning.
9 pillows?
2, actually, maybe 10. No, it's 9. You got that little decorative one in the front that always makes sure it's not upside down.
That's right. Thank you.
But it's, but you know, it's like you accommodate to one another. Like, there's a thing, like Marilyn didn't like sports. She goes to all kinds of sporting events with me. I was extremely messy, and now I'm just messy. So I've made progress. You know, 30 years in. So, you know, but the point is, unless you understand love's a choice, the emotion's not going to naturally drive the action. In dating, the emotion's so strong, it drives the action that you do things you don't normally do. But when you get married, that emotion's not there. And unless you choose to love, your marriage will fall flat.
It flops, right? Because now it's when you do that, it will actually produce the emotion. When you do those sacrificial things, it actually produces that. And so it's stronger. It has more depth.
That's right.
You know, versus the thing that happens when at the beginning of a relationship.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Marilyn, I'd like you to comment on this, but when we spend a lot of time together and we're really investing, all of a sudden, man, she's beautiful. She's this, when we don't, we're distant. I don't notice her as much. So investing in marriage makes it easier to invest in marriage. Would you agree with that, babe?
100%. It does. Because when we get in a pattern of just life, if we don't pull out the time to spend time together, then life takes over and you feel it so fast as a couple. And so the dating once a week has been huge. Even in we were laughing about this earlier before. It's May. It's as busy as Christmas with kids and activities, and I sometimes I go into that date thinking I'm exhausted, but it's putting a stake in the ground and saying this is important, and we're going to spend time even when we don't feel like it, and it's so helpful.
It doesn't sound romantic, right? And I think that's where our culture kind of makes it like, that doesn't sound super romantic, but I think that the reality of sometimes things are a discipline. And they have to be like, I don't love going to work out at 6 a.m. I don't love it. But afterwards, like I've disciplined myself, I'm going to do it. And afterwards, like I feel good, I feel better, I feel refreshed. And it's a similar everything. It's about the discipline of I'm going to make the choice to do it because I know that it's right, because I know it's what's best. And then watch the blessing that comes on that.
That's so good. The purpose of this podcast is to motivate people to invest in their marriage and love better. So, I mean, if you're in Grace Marriage, stay in your Grace Marriage sessions. Keep investing in your church's marriage. If you have a church that doesn't have a marriage ministry, be the persistent widow. Go to your pastors and say, we need a marriage ministry, and we'll help you at gracemarriage.com. Lauren, thank you for sharing with us. You're always so encouraging, and make time for your spouse. I mean, so many people say my marriage is important, but then they tell me they don't have 4 or 5 hours for one another a week. Now, I have ever said, no, it's not important. You have this intellectual belief it is, but you have the belief with action. So, Lauren, thank you so much for being with us, and we really appreciate you, your practice, and I think this side of heaven, you will not know the impact that you've had on so many families, and it's such a gift to be able to refer people to you. Thank you for joining us on the Grace Marriage Podcast. We really hope you're feeling inspired to take intentional steps to grow in your marriage.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. Your support helps us spread the message of grace and reach even more couples.
And if you have a moment, please leave us a review. Your feedback means a lot to us and helps others discover the podcast.
To learn more about how you can grow in your marriage, visit us at gracemarriage.com. Keep building stronger, grace-filled marriages.
We'll see you next week on the Grace Marriage Podcast. Until then, keep growing in grace.